venu de la France pour participer à cette conférence. Lundi matin, il se dirigera vers Washington pour participer à la grande manifestation que tous les membres ou toutes les associations ou tous les partis politiques d'opposition organiseront à Washington. Et pour cela, M. Hassan, en premier lieu, on vous dit bienvenue et bonne chance pour la suite. Mr. Warren, Mike is yours. Une seconde, s'il vous plaît. Veuillez mettre vos mobiles ou téléphones sur vibrator, please. Thank you.
Merci Bliss, merci beaucoup pour votre introduction de mon travail. Je suis très heureux d'être ici dans votre conférence, tellement important. To meet old friends that I've known for now 7 years and many new ones who I expect to be working with in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. First of all, let me say that the place in which we're meeting, cette salle dans cet édifice, est un venue tellement important. PISAC, nous sommes dans l'édifice central de PISAC. PISAC est le plus grand syndicat ici au Canada qui représente les employés de le gouvernement fédéral. So I think it's very fitting that we're having our gathering today in this very building, which represents the largest federal government union that protects the employees, not the management, not the government, but the workers. And if you look in the front hall, you'll see the current president and the former presidents of this very important union, which was founded in the 1960s and became a very significant and powerful organization to represent the rights, the human rights, the interests of the workers so that they got a better deal. They got better jobs, they had better protection, better salaries for their families, for themselves. And so I think it's great that in Canada we can gather in this place freely, openly, and speak about the diaspora, their role in building a better future for Djibouti. Bienvenue à tous et à toutes. Je m'appelle Warren Creech, je suis un avocat qui travaille dans le domaine des droits de l'immigration et des réfugiés et des droits humains depuis 28 ans. Compte tenu de ma profession, j'étais en mesure de plaider en faveur de nombreux réfugiés et demandeurs d'asile de Djibouti, ici au Canada. Mon poste me permet aussi de condamner activement le gouvernement de Djibouti pour ses abus fréquents et de longue date des droits humains. I am honored to be speaking here today at the invitation of Bliss and the other organizers of this conference on the role of the Djibouti diaspora. 3 years ago, I spoke at a conference on human rights in Djibouti held at the University of Quebec, en Ottawa, en Gatineau. In attendance was the late Jean-Paul Noël Abdi, president of the Ligue Djiboutienne des Droits Humains. It was a great honor for me to meet him and to speak together with him at that conference. As many of you know, Mr. Abdi passed away shortly after that, in the year 2012. Throughout his life, Mr. Abdi fought tirelessly against impunity and against corruption in Djibouti. Today, I would like to honor his memory and his many contributions to the human rights movement. Comme plusieurs parmi vous le savons déjà, la Ligue djiboutienne des droits humains travaille fort pour sensibiliser la population de Djibouti et la communauté internationale aux actions du gouvernement qui menacent les droits humains. La Ligue a été fondée en 1999 par M. Abdi. For security reasons, the organization is forced to work semi-clandestinely to accomplish their goals. The work of the organization is carried out by a core team of volunteers like we are, and these volunteers deserve praise and congratulations for the difficult but incredibly important work that they do. Nous savons qu'il y a des organismes comme la Ligue qui font un travail très important à l'intérieur des frontières de Djibouti. En même temps, le fait que la société de Djibouti n'est pas politiquement libre aujourd'hui nous rappelle que la diaspora djiboutienne a un rôle très important à jouer pour la construction de la nation. Je vais commencer avec un aperçu de la situation à Djibouti et ensuite je vais discuter du rôle de la diaspora en matière d'influencer cette situation. Je vais aussi parler du rôle des femmes de la diaspora. I will end with some good instructive examples of African diaspora influencing their home countries, and we'll also touch upon Canada's role, important role that Canada has in helping build a better Djibouti. The current situation in Djibouti. According to the annual Freedom House survey of countries' political liberties, Djibouti's ranking remains at the status of not free in the year 2014. In fact, it declined from partly free to not free in 2011, largely due to the controversial constitutional changes that took place in April 2010, allowing the president to run for a third term in office. Les élections à Djibouti ont connu plusieurs difficultés. Lorsque le président actuel, Ismail Omar Guelleh, whose face is on many of the posters surrounding us in this room today, a remporté son 12e mandat en 2005, le seul autre candidat s'est retiré de l'élection à cause de la répression de l'opposition, de le contrôle exercice de le gouvernement sur les médias. Les principaux partis d'opposition ont refusé de participer aux élections législatives en 2008. Le gouvernement a systématiquement abusé le processus électoral et manipulant le processus et arrêté certains leaders de l'opposition. Le gouvernement de Djibouti exige aux partis politiques de s'enregistrer auprès de le gouvernement. En 2008, le président a dissout le parti d'opposition, le mouvement pour le renouveau démocratique et de redéveloppement, sur les accusations fausses. The economic situation in Djibouti is undermined by corruption. UNICEF reports that as many as 2 out of 3 children in Djibouti are exposed to life-threatening situations because of poverty. A report commissioned by UNICEF in 2009 found that nearly 70% of all children are deprived of at least one basic right, including the right to water, to sanitation, to information, to nutrition, to education, and to health. Djibouti has, as all of you here in this room know, a very high unemployment rate, at nearly 60% in urban areas and over 80% unemployment in rural areas. In terms of the Human Development Index, which is a measure of 3 basic dimensions of human development, a long and healthy life, access to knowledge, and a decent standard of living, Djibouti is ranked now 170th in the world of all countries. Freedom of speech is a major issue in Djibouti. We all know that. Although it is guaranteed in the Constitution, the government routinely and systematically restricts its exercise. The domestic media is almost entirely controlled by the government. The principal newspaper, La Nation, and Radio-Télévision Djibouti, which operates the national radio and television stations, are government-owned and government-controlled. Strict Libel laws prevent journalists from covering sensitive issues, which include human rights. The hostile environment, which means that local human rights groups like the League cannot operate freely, nor, of course, effectively. Les tribunaux ne sont pas indépendants de le gouvernement. Il y a eu des allégations de poursuites politiquement motivées. Les groupes minoritaires, y compris le peuple afar, souffrant de marginalisation sociale et économique, de discrimination et en nombreux cas de persécution. Alors, le rôle de la diaspora. Étant donné dans cette situation, la diaspora djiboutienne est bien positionnée pour offrir de l'aide. Cindy Hurst, rechercheur en chef de l'International Peace Research Institute à Oslo, affirme que les gens qui émigrent d'une société fermée et à une société comme Canada ouverte peuvent profiter de leur nouvelle liberté. En publiant, en s'organisant et en accumulant des ressources financières d'une manière qui serait impossible au pays d'origine. They can use direct strategies. We can do them here, such as political or economic support. Indirect strategies, such as putting pressure on the international community, including and perhaps particularly their own host country, to influence the government in the country of their origin. L'attention portée sur le rôle des diasporas met souvent l'accent sur les ressources financières qu'elles peuvent envoyer aux gens du pays d'origine. Pendant l'année 2007 à 2010, la diaspora djiboutienne autour de le monde a envoyé environ 30 millions de dollars américains par année, en transférant de fonds à Djiboutiens. C'est une somme significante. Néanmoins, le groupe de la Banque africaine de développement avance que la construction d'une nation n'est pas seulement basée sur les finances, mais aussi sur le dialogue politique et social, ainsi que des campagnes de sensibilisation et de plaidoyer. Diaspora can have an especially important influence in countries that are under authoritarian governance, like Djibouti. Diaspora groups often have greater access to media, like newspapers, television, internet, than they did in their countries of origin. It's freer here. Let's use those freedoms. Indeed, they often put great efforts into providing alternate sources of information regarding the political situation in their own homeland. And they can, as we are doing now, broadcast into your homeland so that the people in your homeland know that we care, know that we're free, and know that we're doing whatever we can about it. Horst notes that voting relatives in the country of origin may believe that their relatives in the diaspora here and elsewhere are better informed due to these increased access to media. Furthermore, many immigrants from African countries are skilled immigrants. For example, in the year 2000, 38% of Djiboutian immigrants who left Djibouti were skilled workers. The African Development Bank Group states that skilled immigrants can contribute to their countries of origin by being part of the virtual networks that you create in the country of host, where we now are, for information, for expertise, and for advice. With the exponential growth of electronic media being used, for example, here today, the fact of being on another continent is less and less of a barrier for the diaspora to contribute to their country of origin. Dans l'ensemble, le groupe de la Banque africaine de développement souligne que la diaspora africaine est en mesure de devenir un joueur ailé pour la construction d'institutions démocratiques en Afrique. Bien sûr, en 2003, l'Union africaine a modifié son acte constitutif en y ajoutant une disposition qui invite et encourageons la participation de la diaspora africaine en tout élément intégral du continent et pour la construction de l'Union africaine. Women in the diaspora, and I'm glad to see there are some women here today, and I wish there were more, because women play a very important role. All boats float higher when the women are involved. 2003, the African Union also adopted a protocol on the rights of women in Africa, which aims to enhance women's rights across the continent of Africa. This was significant, given across the world, women continue to have fewer rights, lower education, lower health status, less income, and less access to resources and decision-making than do men. We must work together to end that. Nevertheless, women's critical roles in food production, in income generation, in management of natural resources, community organization, and domestic responsibilities are essential for sustainable development. Il y a un lien entre ces deux protocoles de l'Union africaine, les femmes de la diaspora et tout l'homme qui appuie cette cause, pouvant contribuer à la réalisation des droits de la femme en Afrique et même à Djibouti. Les femmes de la diaspora djiboutienne sont bien positionnées pour contribuer à cette cause. Dans leur pays hôte, elles ont accès à la plus d'éducation et de ressources, donc elles peuvent influencer leurs compatriotes à Djibouti pour plusieurs moyens. Promouvoir l'égalité entre les sexes n'est pas seulement important en soi. La Banque mondiale affirme que l'égalité des sexes améliorerait l'efficacité économique. Bref, si les femmes peuvent être éduquées et peuvent travailler au même niveau que les hommes, l'économie devient plus productive et les institutions deviennent plus inclusives et participatives. In Canada, gender equality is a cross-cutting theme in many government programs, and the Department of Foreign Affairs is committed to improving gender equality worldwide. I will come back to Canada's role shortly. I want to now share with you examples of diaspora's influence. I have three instructive examples of diaspora influencing their home countries that I would like to discuss today. The first, as Bliss mentioned, is the Kango Afar Foundation, which is very close to my heart. Kango Afar is a Canadian humanitarian organization that I launched with my colleague Ahmed Youssef, who was introduced earlier, in 2007 at a conference at Carleton in 2006. Similar to what we're doing here today, I was asked to attend and to speak, and that was the first baby step. And today, I hope there will be more baby steps in this direction. We founded an organization called Kango Afar in 2007 to raise funds, to deliver worthy projects, and to advocate for the Afar people. We did so by cross-pollinating Afar people with non-Afar people, with African people with Canadian people, with bankers and lawyers and doctors and business owners, with newcomers to Canada. That's the way we have achieved some measure of success and moved the goalposts. Its goal is to relieve poverty for the Afar people. Kango Afar works closely with the Afar community here in Canada, with their compatriots in other countries around the world, as well as with local NGOs in Ethiopia. It has successfully implemented a pilot project to provide biosand water filters, a Canadian technology, in the Afar region, which project, as you might have heard, got expanded. We built 55 water filters, and we eliminated cholera in one community which was suffering badly. When people are not healthy, they cannot do anything. They cannot go to school, even if there was school there. They cannot work, even if there was work there. They cannot contribute to their families if their health is suffering. We were able to eradicate cholera in one small village. The foundation, very importantly, also funds primary education for orphaned and vulnerable children in a boarding school. It provides funding for 47 high school students, all of them refugees from Eritrea, and perhaps because of that, the most marginalized. Our foundation also provides post-secondary education by way of bursaries for Afar students and delivers emergency aid to refugees and to internally displaced people. Since its launch, Canada Afar has partnered with many supporters and business leaders here in Canada, as well as with local implementing partners in the Afar region, in Ethiopia. Pendant ces dernières années, le développement d'un petit groupe des individus pour aider le peuple Afar a pris de l'ampleur. Et maintenant, nous avons un grand réseau de sympathisation au Canada et autour du monde. We've led 9 successful mission trips of delegates to the Afar region. That's more than 1 per year. Pretty good for a little group. Then I have to say, it's challenging, it's exciting, it's rewarding, it's creative, but we're doing something. And we got to do something. We can't sit around and think and worry and wonder. It's about action, movement. Pendant mes années avec Canada Afar, j'ai aussi remarqué que le travail de la Fondation a un impact positif sur la diaspora djiboutienne même. Les membres de la diaspora avec qui nous travaillons apprennent des meilleures pratiques, telles que de la bonne gestion, de la transparence et de la responsabilité. De plus, ils développent un reçu qui les aide dans leur vie personnelle et professionnelle. En travaillant ensemble, ils augmentent aussi la sensibilisation des gens de la situation de Djibouti. Let's face it, Djibouti is a small country. There are many Canadians, to this day, there are many Canadians who haven't heard of Djibouti. And I mentioned Djibouti to them, they go, is that a country? Where is that place? Are you sure? Have you made that name up, that word up? As you know, it's a small place and a small population. So one thing that we do, and I do every day, is to educate, to inform Canadians about Djibouti, about these things, in these posters. I tell everyone I can about what's going on there. Djibouti is not on the radar screen. It's not on the political priority list of our government leaders. And the only way for that to happen is for us to educate, to advocate, to inform. We all know the human rights reports. We've read them. Everyone in this room has read those human rights reports of what's going on in Djibouti. We know what's going on. But it's not in our newspapers here. It's not in, our government officials don't know because it's not a priority for our government. So that puts the obligation on all of us to make it, to move the goalposts a little bit. And the only way to do that is to educate. The only way to do that is to get connected with the establishment in Canada. Your neighbors, your work co-workers, your friends, and your politicians, municipal, provincial, federal. It's not going to happen unless we do it. The latent effect of all of this is that the diaspora groups, like the Djibouti people I've worked with, I think they become better integrated. They get better settled. They enjoy a sense of contribution. It actually solidifies the group. It preserves culture and provides meaning and purpose. I know it does in my life, and it does, I'm sure, because you're here today, in yours as well. Pour mon deuxième exemple, j'aimerais parler de l'influence de la diaspora en Éthiopie pendant les élections 2005. Avant les élections, les leaders clés de la diaspora de l'Éthiopie ont décidé d'encourager et de soutenir la participation des partis opposants dans les élections. Ce soutien était important puisqu'en 1995 et en 2000, les partis d'opposition avaient boycotté les élections. Mais en 2005, avec l'encouragement de la diaspora, les partis d'opposition ont décidé de participer aux élections. Donc, avec la participation des partis d'opposition, les citoyens d'Éthiopie auront plus qu'un choix de candidats pour qui voter. Pendant la période juste avant l'élection, il y a eu plusieurs débats sur la politique publique et des manifestations non violentes. Les citoyens d'Éthiopie et de la diaspora étaient très enthousiastes à l'égard de l'élection. In this enthusiastic spirit, many Ethiopians turned out to vote. Unfortunately, as you probably know, violence erupted after the election. The main political party received 67% of the vote. And some people in the opposition parties and the diaspora claimed there had been massive fraud in the process. But the diaspora did not stop being involved. They didn't give up hope. They didn't stop the fight. They kept being involved. The diaspora facilitated vigorous debates on internet sites about whether opposition parties should boycott the legislature. This led to the Ethiopian government blocking access to many of those websites, which suggests that the government saw the power of these online debates, the spark plug provided by the diaspora. Ultimately, one of the opposition parties, the Coalition for Unity and Democracy, CUD, decided to boycott the legislature, a decision which was influenced by opinions of those in the diaspora. Again, the diaspora did not end its involvement there. Diaspora groups turned towards different mechanisms, such as organizing and participating in advocacy campaigns in North America and in Europe, as well as lobbying the US Congress, the State Department, and the World Bank. Dr. Terence Lyons describes the situation in this way, quote, "Both the enthusiasm of the 2005 election and the disillusionment and frustration of its aftermath have inspired the Ethiopian diaspora to become active in Ethiopian politics in creative and more effective ways. I believe that this example shows that although political change may not be smooth, it may not be a linear process, the diaspora have many resources and opportunities at their disposal to adapt to different situations and to continue being influential." Dr. Lyons uses the term political entrepreneurs. You've all heard of business entrepreneurs? Think of us in this room as political entrepreneurs. That's what we are. We're political entrepreneurs. We are taking risks. We have an unwavering commitment for change in Djibouti at our own personal risk and the risk to your relatives back in Djibouti. We are together political entrepreneurs. I think the Ethiopian experience can teach us many lessons going forward. Mon dernier exemple provient de l'Érythrée. L'Érythrée a connu l'indépendance de l'Éthiopie en 1991. En 1993, le gouvernement a invité la diaspora érythréenne à participer au référendum sur l'indépendance. La diaspora a participé en grand nombre. Et après le référendum, plusieurs membres de la diaspora ont été impliqués dans la rédaction et la ratification de la Constitution. Selon moi, ceci incarne la participation de la diaspora envisagée par l'Union africaine, que j'ai mentionné plus tôt. Par contre, comme nous le dit le chercheur Cindy Horst, le niveau de pouvoir du groupe de la diaspora dans des pays fragiles dépend beaucoup de la mesure dans laquelle le gouvernement du pays veut leur accorder la parole. À Djibouti, le gouvernement autoritaire ne voulait pas que voix dissidente. Il ne voudrait probablement pas accorder la parole à la diaspora djiboutienne qui demande des changements politiques. Nevertheless, some governments in African states have made room for the voices of the diaspora. I'm going to give you some examples. Burundi has established a special diaspora department in its Minister of External Affairs. Government of Sierra Leone has established an office to coordinate diaspora affairs in the presidency. In turn, the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has established la maison des Congolais et de l'étranger et des migrants with the support of Switzerland. Can you imagine it? Switzerland and the UK government helped the Republic of Congo establish in their own government a department of foreigners and immigrants using the diaspora because they're a strength. Although the African Development Bank notes that these offices may not have clear frameworks for engagement of the diaspora, I would say we're still at the starting point, and we need to activate those kinds of models for Djibouti. Tous ces exemples nous offrent des modèles pour l'engagement de la diaspora djiboutienne. Bien sûr, il se peut qu'un engagement direct avec le gouvernement djiboutien ne soit pas possible en ce moment, étant donné que le gouvernement est autoritaire. Néanmoins, si le diaspora continue à travailler fort pour construire la nation de Djibouti, il est probable qu'un jour, que la diaspora peut jouer un rôle plus direct en Djibouti. Dans l'entretemps, comme l'exemple de l'Éthiopie nous l'a démontré, la diaspora peut s'adapter à la situation actuelle en trouvant différents moyens, soit directs ou indirects, pour s'impliquer dans le pays, ou dans les mots de Dr. Lyon, pour devenir des entrepreneurs politiques. Of course, not all diaspora groups will engage in political work. In Canada, to obtain a charitable status, an organization must be apolitical. For example, the Djibouti Diaspora Network is an apolitical organization that aims to mobilize the Djibouti diaspora to contribute socially and economically to Djibouti. Its goals are poverty reduction, building knowledge, and building local capacity. Improving the social and economic situation in Djibouti is equally as important as affecting political change. And the two complement one another. Humanitarian and political. They complement one another. Canada's role. What can we do in Canada? And what should Canada's government role be? We should ask what Canada, the host state for many Djibouti's diaspora, can do to help. At the international level, the Universal Periodic Review completed by the United Nations Human Rights Council is one mechanism through which Canada could put pressure on Djibouti. Dans l'examen périodique de 2009, le Canada a félicité Djibouti pour avoir signé la Convention internationale sur l'élimination de toutes les formes de discrimination raciale. Toutefois, le Canada a recommandé que Djibouti ratifie cette convention. Le Canada s'est déclaré concerne par les rapports indiquent des actes de la répression contre les gens dans les syndicats et il a recommandé que Djibouti respecte les droits des syndicats de s'abstenir de l'arrestation, de la détention arbitraire que you're seeing here in these posters, de la violence physique et le harcèlement des représentants syndicaux et d'empêcher l'action syndicale. Le Canada a aussi recommandé que Djibouti modifie les lois sur la liberté de communication, en particulier les lois qui stipulaient que les participants de la gestion financière d'une organisation de presse doivent être citoyens de Djibouti, que le directeur et vice-directeur d'un carrefour des médias doivent être citoyens de Djibouti. Pourquoi? Et que exigeons le directeur d'un carrefour audiovisuel doit être l'âge d'au moins 40 ans. Pourquoi? Le Canada a recommandé en outre que Djibouti élimine l'emprisonnement pour le châtiment des délits de presse et de s'abstenter de l'usage de l'intimidation contre les journalistes en vue de favoriser un climat de tolérance, afin que les politiciens de l'opposition puissent exprimer leurs opinions librement. The Universal Periodic Review of 2013 indicates that Djibouti did ratify the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination in 2011, and also ratified the 2 optional protocols to that convention, as well as other conventions and optional protocols. Djibouti has also stated that it had journalists, trade unions, and associations mandated to promote freedom of expression at the national, regional, and international levels. I don't believe that. The human rights that I've read about the reports in Djibouti, they're saying they're doing that. They're not doing that. The Minister of Communications implemented a training and information program on freedom of expression together with the East Africa Regional Office of the Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights and the National Human Rights Commission. Thus, there have been some positive changes. Nevertheless, Canada once again made remarks in this Universal Periodic Review, asking Djibouti to detail possible reasons for the continued high number of instances of female genital mutilation, despite its measures to implement the national strategy on this issue, as well as which new measures will be adopted to accelerate the process of eliminating this harmful practice. Canada made several recommendations on this topic, highlighting Canada's continued commitment to improving gender equality in Djibouti. In the years to come, Canada will likely continue to probe Djibouti on its progress regarding the protection of human rights. But that's not going to happen unless we push our politicians and we push foreign affairs to do it. It's not going to happen just by chance. We need to let our government here know that we care. You know what's going on in Djibouti better than they do. I've had meetings with foreign affairs on what's going on in these countries. And we are a source of information. We don't have a Canadian embassy in Djibouti. We don't have diplomats placed there. So they rely on us, the diaspora group, to educate, to inform, to report instances of human rights abuse, gaps in the delivery of services by the government of Djibouti to their own nationals. Conclusion. Please allow me just one more minute. The venue of this conference, in this building here in Canada, allows people the opportunity to speak freely about oppressive regimes. The values expressed in our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the freedoms of expression, of association, of political opinion and equality are all values that create a spirit of openness. Let us be frank and honest here today. This is a venue where our views can be freely expressed, thanks to the rights enshrined in our charter. Let us show the world how a free society looks and how it can operate to the benefit of all. But with rights come obligations, I would say. It's not enough to just have the rights. We must express them, and we're obliged to do so. Here in Canada, we have the right to freedom of expression. Let us exercise our corollary obligation to speak and shed light on the failings of the Djibouti government to protect and defend human rights in its country. We cannot turn a blind eye to these abuses. Many refugees from Djibouti have fled to Canada, and to neighboring countries, seeking the protection of our government and the safety and freedoms of our country. According to Canada's 2011 National Household Survey, data on immigration status and periodic immigration, they say only 720 total immigrants and non-permanent residents from Djibouti are living here in Canada. I don't believe that number. How could that be possible? I think myself, I've probably done 1,000 refugee cases from Djibouti myself. How could this survey be accurate? It's not. We know there are more than 720 people from Djibouti here. I bet you there's more than that here in Ottawa only. Okay? So we got to educate our government to show that there's more of us here from Djibouti. We got to fix that. Canada has a crucial role to play in protecting Djibouti people, and in turn this diaspora has a crucial role to play in affecting change back in Djibouti. That's why we're here today. More needs to be done to help in the fight against human rights abuses in Djibouti and in the region, not just Djibouti, but the region. More needs to be done to support and incubate a vibrant civil society in Djibouti. More needs to be done to fill the many gaps and deficiencies left vacant by an ineffective and uncaring government in Djibouti. I remain devoted to those causes. We must work together. Plurality of views and plurality of nationalities can and should be a strength. Holding this event and others like it is a way to encourage and effect real change. J'ai beaucoup d'espoir pour influence qui pourrait avoir le diaspora djiboutien dans le proche futur. J'espère que nous pourrons toutes travailler ensemble pour réaliser un meilleur avenir pour les peuples de Djibouti. Merci beaucoup.